We're all set, Patrick. Thank you, Tammy.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for hanging on. Welcome to the redo of our January 2021 CV1 Land Use, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee meeting. This is, I say redo because those of us who joined on the 11th of January know we had some technical difficulties. Thank you to the presenters and applicants for bearing with us, and to the members of the public for rescheduling and coming here today. I'm Patrick Cannell, chair of the committee, along with Fern Cunningham, my co-chair, and Diana Sweetai, our director of land use and planning at CV1. We have two items on our agenda. The first is an update from the mayor's office, the community affairs unit, on the Manhattan detention center portion of the borough-based jail system. And Andrew from the mayor's office is with us again. Andrew, you were able to give your presentation and deck last time when we did meet on the 11th. We also talked about a list of questions, 20 or so questions still outstanding to the mayor's office from the community. And I guess I would start by asking you if you have anything to update on those answers to those questions. And if not, if we just have I don't think there's a need to go back through the presentation that you've given already. We can pick up where we left off and begin with public questions. So Andrew, if you can unmute and let us know the status of the answers to the questions.
Could you ask the question first or state the question?
There are over 20 of them, so they've been listed out there.
Diana can put them up on a share screen, Patrick, to make it easier. And we can.
There are 22 questions, so let me just pull them up.
Hey, while Diana's doing that, so I do not have the answers to those questions. Those will be made available first to the Manhattan Neighborhood Advisory Committee on Monday evening at 6 p.m. And then they will be made available to the larger public shortly thereafter.
So, Andrew, you can already guess I'm going to jump on Patrick's toes here, but as chair of Community Board 1, I'm lodging a complaint here. We had questions asked in a public meeting at a community board meeting. We have been asking questions since March of 2020. These questions date 9 months back. I understand I'm shooting the messenger here. However, to answer the questions at a private meeting that is not open to the public, that were questions asked by the public in a public meeting, does not satisfy the system and is quite frankly unfair. If you have the answers, why not give them today? Your NAC meeting, which is the Neighborhood Advisory Council, is Monday and it's private. It's not open to the 69 people who are on this call today. That's just blatantly not fair for public engagement. So I'm frustrated because I know we've been asking these questions. I think all of us remember being in the room at 1 Center Street when questions were asked after the February meeting. So I do want to torture you just a little bit by going through every question, looking at every one of these 22 and telling me that, if you have to say, I cannot answer any of these, that's one thing. But I personally know that the Manhattan Detention Center complex timeline was done at PDC in October. So why on earth can't you answer the community board and provide even the same information that you provided there?
So I do not have all of the answers to these questions at this time, and my agency colleagues are still reviewing them and finding answers because we are in a pending litigation with appealing the recent lawsuit. So as our legal team does review this, they are helping the other agencies prepare answers that will be provided both to the NAC and to the community board.
Why can't we have the project timeline that was shown to PDC in October?
So I do not have that right now, and I can get that and make sure to share it with you.
Diana and Patrick, you want to go through the list of 22 just so we can be orally on record at the meeting, and whatever
Yeah, I would.
Andrew has to opine on that would be great.
Tammy,
I would ask-
before you go there, just before, I have a predecessor.
Bruce,
Hang on, Bruce.
Okay,
Bruce, let's go through the questions. You can get your question asked after Patrick goes through this, because this is 9 or 10 months in the making.
Yeah.
well, he
I
said he
think-
could answer some questions. He should answer the ones he said he can answer. He said he can't answer all the questions.
Bruce, we're going to
So
go
he
through
can
them.
answer some of the questions.
Bruce, and we're going to go through them. That's the point of the exercise here. We're going to get them on record as to whether you can say it one way or another. I don't understand the big mystery, and hiding behind some sort of nonsense legal privilege is ridiculous. It's going to be out Monday anyway. I don't know why it can't be out tonight. So, Diana, if you wouldn't mind going through each one and just get them on the record. Thank you.
Sure. Question number 1. Can you address the Borough-based jail / Manhattan Detention Complex project timeline?
Excuse me. The project has been delayed because of COVID-19 concerns, and the project has been pushed back some months. And as I said to Tammy, I will work with PDC to get that timeline and share with you guys, with the community board.
Okay, question 2. The Borough-based jails design public meeting schedule and purpose / schedule for all upcoming meetings concerning the Manhattan Borough-based jail site.
So the next meeting will be the Neighborhood Advisory Committee on Monday. And then shortly thereafter, in February or early March, we will be meeting with Community Board 1 to present an updated report.
Okay, question 3. How does the public learn about the details of these upcoming meetings on this project? For example, the justice and design workshops and meetings.
So we have provided community engagement through CAU. We have worked with elected officials and the community boards, as well as various criminal justice advocates, to help disseminate the information.
Okay, question 4. How has the COVID pandemic has the COVID pandemic affected design timeline, etc., and how?
It's pushed it back a couple months, and the further details can be provided by my agency colleagues, first at the NAC and then when they address the community board.
Okay, question 5. A written response on points that were noted as being addressed by the Borough-based jails team in our resolution. That's a reference to our original resolution on the Borough-based jails plan. And then some months later, I believe it was March of last year, is when we did a follow-up resolution to address the points that were left unaddressed in our original resolution.
I don't have those answers. My agency colleagues are working on that.
Okay, question 6, confirmation of the joint venture of ACOM and Hill International.
I don't have information on that. My agency colleagues will have to answer that.
Okay.
Same thing
question-
for number 7.
Okay, I'm going to read it out loud for posterity. Confirmation and breakdown on how much of the $107.4 million contract with DDC and ACOM has been spent. Question 8, ask for all agency reps to come to the next meeting for Q&A. Well, the next immediate meeting is the NAC meeting. Can you confirm if all of the agency partners will be present at that meeting? And
Yes,
can
they
you
will.
confirm if they will be able to come to the next community board meeting?
So they will be at the NAC, and we will be working to schedule a meeting in February or early March.
By the way, they were invited to this meeting, so everyone understands. They declined to make it.
Okay, question 9. According to the points of agreement for the Manhattan Borough-based jails, which is linked here and referenced, the city is bound legally as to point 3 design consultation below to have regular meetings, provide timelines, and ensure input from the community. Is the city choosing to do otherwise now?
We have been doing community engagement meetings, and we will be providing some timelines and other questions, and more elaborate, detailed answers will be given by my agency colleagues.
Okay, question 10, please address the following page 1 last paragraph as referenced here. The 4.5 million fiscal 2021 cut targets programs agreed to in the borough-based jails points of agreement, i.e. how have the investments in cultural and community institutions been impacted?
I have to defer to my agency colleagues on that one. Can you scroll down on the Microsoft Word document, if you don't mind?
I'm seeing here we're on 11. I've scrolled down as much as I can. I'm trying to keep scrolling through as we're going through them here.
Okay.
On your,
Diana, the screen only shows through 9. That's why.
I'm so sorry. I paused.
I
to
could pull it up on my
apologize for
screen,
that.
that's no problem.
Okay. It should be good, and we'll also I'll link it. I can't do it right this second, but when we get to public comment, I'll link it so everybody can reference it and can access it online. Question 11, please reconcile how the city plans on moving forward as represented at the recent meeting with the below statement in the budget, which states otherwise.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Please reconcile how the city plans on moving forward as represented at the recent meeting with the below statement in the budget, which states otherwise. There's a reference here that I could pull up.
Yeah, I have to defer to my agency colleagues on the most recent budget.
Okay, it's a reference to the City Council fiscal 2020 to 2024 executive financial plan overview. Okay, question 12, please provide a demographic breakdown of incarceration by age, gender orientation, race, disabilities, currently and last week, and by month and by quarter.
So I don't have that information, but it is publicly available, and the links will be provided by my agency colleagues.
Okay, question 13, what disability accommodations are in place and have been utilized?
My agency colleagues are going to have to answer that one.
Okay, question 14, what is the number of COVID cases by day from March 2020 to present?
I believe that information is also public, and the links will be provided by my agency colleagues.
Okay, question 15, what accommodations have been put in place to protect detainees from COVID right now?
My agency colleagues at DOC will have to respond to that.
Question 16, what adjustments have been made to this plan in preparation for future pandemics?
That information will be available at the NAC and then made available to the community board thereafter. I don't have that right now.
Okay, and can such breakdowns be included in all future reports as slides, demographics, and COVID data?
So we can certainly provide the information on where that can be found once it's made available.
Would you be able to provide it at the NAC and at upcoming community board meetings in slide form?
I know they will be provided at the NAC.
Okay, question 18, in light of the decision by Judge Kelly to annul the city's resolution to build the Manhattan borough-based jails and an injunction from prohibiting the construction of the Manhattan borough-based jails, does the city still plan to move forward with the rest of the borough-based jails project, continue to engage and spend monies on the project, i.e. continuing to engage the construction manager, AECOM, etc.?
So the city does plan to move forward with it, and to address the other points, my agency colleagues will have to respond to that.
Question 19, when will the city intend on fulfilling the below conditions ordered by the judge? I apologize, I don't have them here, but I will make sure you have them. I know you have them from previous submission of questions.
Yeah, our legal team is reviewing it, and we'll provide an update shortly thereafter.
Okay, we're entering the newest section of questions here. Question 20, it has now been reported that there is a 2-year delay for completion and approximately a $500 million budget cut. What is being cut? How is the delay derived?
My agency colleagues will be able to speak further on the budget.
Question 21, provide updates on the 3 firms being considered by the city as the builders of the jail: Gilbane Building Company, Leon DeMattis Construction, and Plaza Construction, how they were chosen, what were their qualifications, and provide a copy of the RFPs that were delivered to them.
My agency colleagues will have to provide an answer for that.
Okay, and the last question, question 22, provide an update on the MZO for the curb cut on Center Street. See attached. Why is this being considered for a mayoral zoning override instead of going through the usual ULURP process? Provide the traffic study for such a curb cut. Please explain the process in which the city has decided to bypass ULURP and proceed with a mayoral zoning override.
I don't have that information. My agency colleagues will have to respond to that.
Okay, Patrick, that's the end of this list.
All right, thanks. I heard a lot of deference to the agency colleagues again who were invited to be here and frankly should have been to answer these questions. Let's turn to questions from committee members and then questions from the public. Pat Moore, I see that your hand is still up. I'm not sure if you had that up from earlier or wish to ask a question.
Sorry, I'll take it now.
No worries. Susan?
Oh, Patrick, I have a question.
Yes,
My question is, we are entering the mayor's swan song, and there are issues around politics and whatever. Will they be able to give us a timeline? It seems like they're pushing this through. We have sued, right? There has been a suit and there is another suit. Am I correct? Around the jail?
So there was a lawsuit that the city did, it ruled against the city, and the city is appealing that. And we will be moving forward so that if the appeal is rendered in our favor, that we have continued to done the community engagement and outreach that is needed to move forward.
You have? You
We
mean?
are doing that.
Okay. You were really set up tonight, kiddo. Okay. That's all.
You know what? I appreciate you guys holding my feet to the fire. You're absolutely right. We haven't got you these answers for some time, and I understand how frustrating that can be. And I do appreciate you guys understanding. I am the messenger, but we hopefully can continue to work together and, start 2021 with a little bit more community engagement and a little bit more transparency on our part to help garner the community support needed to really make this project such a success.
Andrew, you know what I'm going to say to that, so I will retain my verbiage by saying 9-10 months in the making, any improvement would be great. But no offense, you've been very gracious to try and come to these meetings, but you really shouldn't be coming back without the agencies because it's not helping. It's actually just inflaming people even angrier. And it's not fair for you as a human being, and I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for that, but it's the job you've got. So come back with them, please.
No, I do promise that going forward, I will be working more closely with my agency colleagues to have them address the community board regularly. But they are handling multiple projects and they do have very busy schedules. So I hope that in lieu of them coming to every meeting, that my providing some updates, hopefully in the slides presented on the demographics, will act as some community engagement to help move the process and garner some community support. But you're absolutely right. I do need to work more closely with my colleagues to get them to have some more transparency and answer the questions provided.
Yeah, I mean, this is only one of the biggest public works projects potentially the city's making, and we're all working on multiple things at the same time. So Thanks for trying to put that effort. We're gonna go Justine, then Vicky, then Alice.
Thank you. I just have to say that it's just very disingenuous of what it's like you're wasting your time and you're wasting our time having this conversation right now. Because if these questions were presented to you before, I understand your colleagues can't be here, but the answers should have been provided, and it's just not acceptable. And it does, for me at least, create a lack of trust and a lack of faith in the good position of the mayor's office and of what's going on. So I'm very disappointed. And one more thing, there's a couple of board members in the attendee chat, so just take a look, guys.
All right, thanks, Diana. Check that out. Vicky, and then Alice, please.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Andrew, on a personal note, I was born in a communist socialist country in Eastern Europe. My parents left their homeland to come here for a better life. And what I heard tonight, aside from the last 4 years, which I'm beginning to think this agency is no better, or our city, than the last 4-year administration, what I hear tonight just reminds me of this lack of, like Justine said, trust and faith and future and belief. Where does an agency or a mayor that we elect allow himself to behave like this, and then you just come and present it? My dear, at some point you might have to stand up and say, I'm not going to shoot children on the street because you told me. I'm sad. We came here for a better life, and now you just confirmed to me that the last 40 years have been a complete waste. We're corrupt. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. I guess I'm next. And thanks, Vicky. Just a few questions, certainly echoing a little bit of the disappointment that's been voiced here, Andrew. But just a couple of specific questions. Could you please define who exactly are the agency colleagues you refer to?
It's the Department of Design and Construction, the Department of Corrections, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, the city's legal department, and the Deputy Mayor of Operations.
Sorry, I'm just writing this down, although I realize it's in a recording. Thanks. And will all of them be present on the Monday meeting that you're referring to?
Yes, they will. And they will be present shortly thereafter when we present to Community Board 1. As well as Community Board 3.
I don't know if, Diana, do we have a meeting date for this? Has this been established for this CB1, CB3 meeting? Is this a public hearing? Is it a specific CB1 meeting?
We do not have anything hashed out yet. We are just letting you know that we will be scheduling one in the near future.
Is the near future consisting of the next 2 months? Are we talking before, for example, March?
Yes, February or March.
Okay, thanks. Could you also define or who you consulted with to form the neighborhood council that you refer to?
That was done before I was at the Community Affairs Unit, but I believe that was done in partnership with the elected officials office, Borough President and Councilmember Chin.
Okay. And why are these meetings not open to the public just for listening purposes?
So these meetings are a small group because it was a little bit more, these people were selected to be advisors to the project while still taking the consideration of community input through community boards and resolutions and whatnot.
But that's not exactly asking my questions. I understand that you have a smaller group of people who will engage on the topics. My question is why, you know, those of us who are, well, I actually am, but those who are not part of this group are not allowed to simply listen to the
It's my understanding
meetings.
that is how the borough president and the Councilmember Chin's office.
Oh, that's.
But I'm not sure this happened before this group formed before I was with the
Okay.
mayor's office.
Because I know that in our resolution, we very much asked for the public, you know, a more public engagement at the NAC level. So I guess we'll have to check back, Tammy and I, with Manhattan Borough President and Councilmember Chin's office to see if there's something that would allow for the public to take part in these meetings. That seems critical and would probably be very helpful to the public. And let me see if I jotted down a couple of questions. And just lastly, just a personal note, because I happened to, by accident, come across the presentation that was provided by you and the agency colleagues that you've described on, I think it was October 22nd or the 19th, to the DCP, or CPC, I guess, the Planning Commission. Why was the community board not made aware of that very good presentation, which in fact did answer probably a lot of our questions? Why were we not made aware of that? Why wasn't that presentation provided to this community board?
I'm going to have to follow up, like I said, with Tammy to get that information. I'm not exactly sure what presentation that was.
I don't think it's Tammy. I think it would be, it's the community. It was given to the City Planning Commission.
Yes, Tammy was referencing timelines in that presentation. As I said, I'll have to follow up.
Okay, so it's the same question follow-up. Okay, thanks very much, Patrick and Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Vera Song and then Laura Starr, please.
Thank you, Patrick. Andrew, I have a question. It's come to light, the Littman Commission basically filed a request for an amici brief in the appeals process of the litigation that's being filed currently. In it, they state that they've been funded partially. The staff has been funded by City Council since July of 2017. My question to you, and I know you can't probably answer this now, but if you could go back and find out for me, I would like to know when it was decided by City Council and the city to allocate funds to this Littman Commission, and actually how much has been provided to the Littman Commission from that point on to now. It calls into question, as you may figure out, all along the commission has been touted as being independent. Now it seems to me it may not be independent, and it's the findings of this commission is what is the basis for this borough-based jail project. So if you could find out that for me, I would like to know those answers, Andrew. Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly ask my colleagues.
Okay. A second question that I had is, it recently was reported that there were 400 detainees remaining in the current 124-125 White Street location, the Manhattan Detention Complex, which has a capacity of 900. So now there were only 400 remaining, probably due to all the different bail reforms that have been implemented, et cetera. And they have now moved back to Rikers. Given the fact that there has been such a reduction in the detention population, given the fact that your project is being moved out 2 years, that there's clearly not enough money as it stands right now, and money that could be better spent on things that are seemingly a lot more important than building huge new jails. And as well as the fact that you have an injunction right now to not build and construct a jail in Manhattan. Is there any thought of the city to just simply repurpose and remodel the existing detention center?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, thanks.
Laura?
Hi. So I'm not sure who can address this question, but given that this is the last year of this mayor's being mayor, like at what point, if this project doesn't look like it has a green light, will it be terminated?
That would have to be for future administrations.
Okay. I mean, is there a point at which it, if there's still so much opposition to it, and the mayor is like, obviously at the end of his term, I guess what you're saying is it would just be picked up by the next administration.
Yeah, the next administration will have to deal with that, but it also it works with the timeline that is underway to close the Rikers facility, so the two coincide. But the future of this beyond the de Blasio administration will fall onto the next mayor.
And when is the Rikers facility supposed to close?
I believe it's 2027.
I see. But it can't close if this project doesn't have a green light. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Laura. A reminder for committee members, if you could take your hand down, if you have already gone. Bruce, you're next, and then Tammy.
Andrew, you seem like a nice guy, and I'm speaking without any, any axe to grind one way or another regarding the project. I'm just going to ask you about you. You seem like the Anthony Fauci of the de Blasio administration set out to dry. I mean, why did you come before us today except to respond to an invitation? You can answer no questions, even questions that aren't on the list that are basic, like how many people have COVID. That's an easy statistic. That's not even controversial. So I'm asking you to respond to why you are here other than the invitation. And what was your goal in coming to us?
I intended to present the findings of the second design workshop, as I did previously. That was interrupted by technical difficulties. I wanted to make sure that the community had an opportunity, if anybody was not available due to the technical difficulties that I was experiencing and others were experiencing, that nobody missed that opportunity to have that presentation.
I see.
Okay, Tammy, and then we're going to turn to the public. For members of the public, if you are on the phone or in the attendee list and you would like to be heard or to ask Andrew a question, please use the raise hand feature and we will figure out how to unmute you and you can ask your question. Tammy, please go ahead.
So this morning on Borough Board meeting, we had a great presentation that was about a police reform commission. And I asked their goal obviously was looking at the impact in NYPD reform to lower, to see how many people are being arrested, how it's handled, things like that, which in an ideal world will result in fewer incarcerations, which is what everyone is talking about here, that are unjustified and off the wall. I asked them if any of the work that they were doing would be informing or affecting any of the work that I'm going to say you because it is the mayor's incentive and push on this. How are we building a building to house? The projects are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Our goal is to work on criminal justice reform and police reform and lower the number of people. And yet we're looking at a building and a scope and scale that is huge. At what point in this process do the two connect? How can we ensure that you are not overbuilding? What mechanisms have been put in place to take a look to be able to adjust the design process based on program changes, systematic changes that are being reviewed, looked at, and implemented in the next few years, which should all be in place and effective long before Rikers close?
Yeah, I do know that my agency colleagues are taking all that into consideration, and they will be able to provide in-depth responses to that first at the NAC, and then we'll be able to get that to the community board. But we do understand those concerns, and we are working very closely with PD to make sure that what they're doing on the ground is going to match up with what is happening at the prison. At that meeting I think it was Chief Madgery, and he works very closely with our office, sharing statistics and community outreach on what they're doing so that we can take it back and share with our agency colleagues.
All right.
Thank you.
Tammy, if you'll take your hand down. I see no members of the public with their hands raised. Diana, am I missing something?
I don't either, actually. I will reiterate that if anybody's
There's one.
Yep.
It just popped.
Okay, Johnny. Let me
Johnny?
just reiterate, if anybody from the public is interested in making a comment or asking a question, please use the raise hand button. If you cannot use the raise hand button, please chat to me as the host, and we will make sure to call on you and unmute you when your time comes. And for now, I will move over to Johnny with his hand up. Hi, Johnny.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, how are you? So one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit against the city, the successful lawsuit against the city, I'd just like the board members to know that the city has continued basically to pretend like they're listening to the public. They had a design meeting where no members of the public were allowed to talk. The basic questions about the jail, and the whole idea of spending this much money at this particular time in this particular community and not getting criminal justice reform. They didn't talk about any of those. They just said, okay, community involvement. You like the black door, you like the green door, or you like the yellow door. And so they're going through the motions of community involvement so they can tick off that box and misrepresent that they're listening to anybody. And this nice gentleman who came here today basically is a sacrificial lamb, is another indication that the city is not listening to anybody. They're not listening to the judge. They're not listening to the community board. They're not listening to the public.
Thanks, Johnny. And I know many of our board members are following along with the events. Howard Hume, you're next.
Yeah, hi. I was at the second design meeting. I was at a previous design meeting, and I was at several NAC meetings. I think those meetings are a disgrace because, like John just mentioned, they only allow you to pick black drapes or white drapes or whatever. But the important questions about the location, the site selection of the jail is out of our hands. And then they come to these meetings and say, we engage the community and we have the community's approval, which they don't, okay? Because they don't provide the options for the questions that we want to be asked. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Howard. With that, I think, Diana, correct me if I'm wrong, I see no other hands up. I think we can close the matter. We all get it. Andrew, I think you get it, and we'll look forward to hearing more as soon as possible. Tammy, anything to close this out?
Patrick, I'm sorry, we have one more who messaged me from Think Chinatown. And I've just unmuted them. Hi, Yin, are you there? Okay, Yin from Think Chinatown.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, there you are. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think the past two comments from our community members are totally spot on about the last two community engagement sessions. So a question for Andrew, which I know Andrew will probably not have the answer for us, is what is the criteria that the mayor has for effective community engagement? Because I agree, like just saying that you're having these sessions, right, which are really not designed for actual input. It's designed to actually avoid having real input from the community, but yet they're ticking the box for community engagement. So where's the criteria, right, that we can like actually understand when you say we've done community engagement, what that actually means?
So I'll have to find out exactly what the definition of community engagement is for this project, but I know that on any project that I'm representing on behalf of the mayor, any community engagement that I'm doing, I want to provide the community a robust opportunity to share input and share their feelings. And, you know, whether I can provide, you know, positive changes to that or not, I would like them to know that their concerns are being heard and they are being brought back to the table and shared with my colleagues at whatever agency or whatever enforcement unit that there is, and know that the community affairs unit particularly is here just for that, and that when I do come to these meetings that are so highly contested, that I know that we're not doing the community justice, and it may not seem like it, but I am kicking and screaming on the back end to get my agency colleagues and to get more community engagement for everyone, so that we don't have to continue to have these conversations.
Great. And then I guess my question too is, how are these sessions scoped? So in the last session with the just design elements, that was ran by AECOM, correct? Or is there a subcontractor for community engagement for the project?
I believe that was, and it was also done with Queen Strategies.
Queen Strategies.
Yeah,
okay.
there was a Jersey-based firm that was doing that, I recall.
And then when you scope this out with them so they understand both what the content of the community engagement process, like what that content of that community engagement session should be, and also outreach, who is doing that work?
So for the scope, it depends on which agency that information is going to be used for. So for the design workshops, it was DDC. And for outreach, we did work with the elected officials office, community boards, and various community-based organizations, as well as some criminal justice advocates, to make sure that there was wide advertisement for this.
Okay. Another question I have about the community engagement process is, how many people who were at the community engagement session actually needed the translation services?
I don't have that information, but we did want to make sure that it was available for anybody who did need it.
Yeah, I understand that. And something that we find is that even though translators are offered, if proper outreach isn't done, people who, you need to do the outreach in language as well, and using the networks of those who speak that language. So you can't just do outreach the same mainstream ways. And one really good indicator to know if you're hitting the entire community is by seeing if those translators actually have to, do their job. I know they're translating anyways because it's on the internet, but before I remember going to these meetings and there's no one sitting at their table being translated. For numbers, can we add that to the official question list of how many people actually use the translation services in these community engagement meetings? I think that would be great. And I would also love to see back, Andrew, I know you have my email, the criteria for what community engagement means in this project. And also if there's any opportunity for input, as Think Chinatown is a nonprofit based in Chinatown, specifically focused on community engagement. If there's opportunity for input on the community engagement process, I would definitely like to know, because I have a few things to say, specifically in the scoping section before you even get to working with your subcontractor on running the session, specifically on outreach as well.
Yeah, and outreach, we can certainly connect on the scope. We'll have to talk a little bit further and see which of our agency colleagues may be able to get involved.
Yeah, and if you would copy Diana at CB1 on those questions, if you don't mind, I think that would be very helpful. And continue our.
I've already written Diana an email this session already, so I'll send another one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I believe we can close this item. Andrew, the Manhattan Borough Director of the Mayor's CAU, thanks for being with us. We'll hope to see you again soon with some answers. Our second item is an application by 240 Greenwich Street It's a private application for a modification to a special permit, and specifically the applicant seeks, quote, minor modification of the special permit in order to replace a special permit drawing to reflect the A, proposed modifications to the outdoor open areas on the project site, consisting of the creation of a 23,800 square foot public access area, or PAA, that would include new seating, plantings, and other amenities, and B, elimination of the reference to the, quote, public lobby, unquote. Do we have presenters for the applicant 240 Greenwich Street?
Yes, we do. I'm going to start if that's okay.
David, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. We're happy to be back for the redo.
Thank you.
I'm David Karnofsky from Free Frank Land Use Counsel to the Bank of New York Mellon, and I'm joined by a colleague from the firm, Jeremy Cozen, and other members of the team will introduce themselves as we move along in the presentation. This is an application by BNY Mellon with respect to what is its world headquarters building at 240 Greenwich Street, located on the block bounded by West Street to the west, Murray Street to the north, Greenwich Street to the east, and Barclay Street to the south. The site is occupied with a 23-story, approximately 995,000 square foot office building with ground floor retail uses. Before we get into the public space proposal, I think it's useful to have a very brief summary of the building's approval history. In 1980, the City Planning Commission approved a special permit for the new building that granted height and setback waivers that allowed the building to penetrate the sky exposure plan. The Commission's approval in 1980 also anticipated the creation of a second-level public walkway located within the building that would connect across Barclay Street to 7 World Trade Center. And under that plan, a portion of the building's ground floor would be used by the public to access stairs and elevators that would allow the public to travel to and from this second-level public walkway. Now, this elevated walkway plan did not come to fruition, and the City Planning Commission removed it from the special permit in 1990 after the owners of 7 World Trade built their building without providing for the connection. The proposal before you today is to add a significant new outdoor public space through the provision of landscaping, seating, and other amenities in a 23,800 square foot public access area. BNY Mellon would be responsible for maintenance of these spaces, which would be open to the public. There are no physical changes for the building itself, and the public access area would not generate any bonus floor area. And as Patrick said, to make this change, BNY Mellon is seeking CPC approval of a minor modification of the special permit in order to reflect these new open spaces on the site, including the seating, the plantings, and the other amenities. The modifications to the special permit drawing would also eliminate a reference on the ground floor plan to a, quote, public lobby, which is a vestige of the old elevated public walkway plan. We'd be happy to discuss that more later if you'd like. So I'm now going to hand the presentation to David Vanderveer, who is Director of Government Relations for BNY Mellon, and he's going to talk about the bank's use of the building as its global headquarters and the bank's historical ties to Lower Manhattan. And after David, we'll hear from Greg Sprich and Gloria Lau at Stantec about the design of the space. So thank you. David?
We're waiting for David Vanderveer.
Hold on.
He's muted.
Is it muted? Okay.
Good, we can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you. If you're using headphones, is it possible to try without them?
Not working.
We see your mouth moving, but no sound.
David, you could try going into the options at the bottom.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I'm David Vanderveer, Director of Government Relations for BNY Mellon. Just wanted to give you a brief overview. The Bank of New York Mellon was founded in 1784 by Alexander Hamilton. As many of you know, we've had our presence in Lower Manhattan since our founding, and we're very proud of our connection to the city and to Lower Manhattan. In April 2018, we purchased the land underneath our building at 101 Barclay from the city. In July of that same year, we officially moved our global headquarters to the building, and we updated the address to 240 Greenwich to reflect that the Greenwich Street entrance is the main entrance to the building now, due to damage from 9/11. As part of that move, we've been modernizing and upgrading the interior of the building floor by floor. As David Karnofsky mentioned, we're seeking to modify our existing special permit in order to create new outdoor public space, and we'll be starting a revocable consent process to install bollards that will further secure the building as well as pedestrians utilizing the sidewalks around the building. The project will enhance the pedestrian experience, and the new outdoor public space will provide much needed additional greenery and open space for the neighborhood and Lower Manhattan. The current pandemic has reinforced the importance of outdoor open space, and we feel like that our proposal will add to that. A highlight of this plan is our proposed new Alexander Hamilton Place in the current plaza at the corner of Murray Street and West Streets. This new 7,000 square foot, roughly publicly accessible green space will significantly enhance the site and surrounding neighborhood by providing open space amenities to both residents and workers. BNY Mellon has made a commitment to continuing and expanding our presence in New York City and Lower Manhattan by designating this building as our global headquarters. The investments in accessible open green space, as well as building improvements, is a reflection of this commitment. We're excited about this project because in a COVID-19 and hopefully soon a post-COVID-19 environment, we think that the exterior improvements to our headquarters building will be a great addition and benefit to the neighborhood. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Greg Sprich to kind of walk through the design.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, David. The Bank of New York Mellon is located at 240 Greenwich Street. This is a quick site plan of the land uses in the area. And as you all know, it's a very dense neighborhood with a mix of commercial, residential, and office uses. And generally, there's a scarcity of open space, especially within a few blocks radius of the site. So it was a goal of the bank and the Department of City Planning to expand the public realm improvements to contribute to the much needed green space of the neighborhood. Great. So zooming out a bit, this shows the other open spaces within the vicinity of the bank, including Battery Park City to the west, the 9/11 Memorial to the south, and Washington Market Park to the north. Many of the closest parks to the site are either smaller spaces or more active recreational uses. Our intent with this
I
site.
don't see your slide. Oh, there they are. Okay. All right.
Can you just remember to mute yourselves, folks?
Our intent for this site is to contribute to the open space network by activating the street frontages of the building, making the entire block more visually appealing, and to provide more opportunities for seating. Looking at some of the existing photos, you can see the areas around 240 Greenwich Street could use some improvement. There are wide areas of mostly concrete sidewalks surrounded by a lot of vehicular traffic. In addition, there's nothing to mark the significance of the building entrance on Greenwich Street, as you can see in photo 4. Currently, there are some freestanding security planters with seasonal planting, but the goal of the design was to integrate permanent and varied planting with plenty of seating opportunities to make the area a much more welcoming destination and a welcoming pedestrian experience. Of course, 240 Granite Street is an existing building, so our design is also considering all the existing building conditions and services, its operational requirements, and egress. To the rear of the building is the existing public space at the corner of Murray and West Streets. In picture number 1, the building visible in the background is the Bank of New York Mellon, and on the right hand of that photo is DC 37. Central to this space are 4 mature pin oak trees. And as you can see, the public space is sunken below the surrounding sidewalks in some areas greater than 3 feet. This creates a pinch point at the corner of Murray and West Streets where people wait to cross West Street. The sunken nature of the plaza, lack of seating, and a lack of greenery contribute to this open space not feeling very welcoming. Taking in all these considerations, we are proposing the following master plan up on the screen. This includes the streetscape improvements and a new redeveloped plaza called Alexander Hamilton Place, as David mentioned. These improvements are best seen in the renderings to the right and will be discussed in more detail shortly. Since the winter of 2018, we've been collaborating with the Department of City Planning on this design and have developed a cohesive visual vocabulary around the full block, something that clearly identifies the Bank of New York Mellon and is keeping with the surrounding context. This vocabulary includes a continuous concrete seat wall that wraps around the building and activates the streetscape with planting and seating and creates 3 key moments. The first being a corner seating area at Barclay and Greenwich Street, at the intersection of Barclay and Greenwich in the lower right of the plan. The main entrance of the building, which is at the mid-block of Greenwich Street, and Alexander Hamilton Place at the corner of West and Murray Streets. Just to note, there is a separate streetscape project as part of the Vision Zero initiative where the sidewalks along Greenwich Street will be widened at the crosswalks. We're coordinating with all aspects of that design, and that is being administered by DDC and DOT.
So I'm going to start giving a walk through each street frontage, starting with Barclay Street, highlighting the key design element. The seating and the planting will start on the west side, and it will go around the building. Sorry, I just need to minimize. Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll go around the building, forming a series of seating nooks. There will also be a row of ginkgo tree in front of the building egress. In addition, we're going to have a special cobble paving strip that is going to go along the curb line that will encapsulate the proposed security bollard. The series of seating will have seating that facing the street and also series of seating nooks. Within the nooks, we're going to have movable table and chairs and also circular planter that will serve as seating. In addition, the planting design will propose a series of trees, shrub, and ground cover, which will add to the seasonal color and also variety of planting in the pedestrian realm. This is the main entrance of the bank is located on Greenwich Street right here, as I indicate the mouse. The planting and the seating is going to highlight the entrance. And the seat wall will continue on the northern side of the street and provide more seating in this area. As mentioned before, we are also working hand in hand with the Greenwich Street Vision Zero project. As you can see, this gray dash line over here is the existing curb line. So the improvement will widen the sidewalk and add in traffic calming element along the street. The rendering showing closely where the entrance is with the trees and seating highlighting the entrance. And the seating will be in front of the building all along the sidewalk, but also giving plenty of space and width for people to walk in front and in and out of the building. Moving on to Mary Street, as you all know, it is a very busy east-west corridor. The design proposed 3 circular planter and a smaller seating planting area. In addition, will be an open street tree arcade. This allows seating and both shade in front of the building, but also at the same time allow pedestrians to walk around more flexibly. and the row of street tree will continue over to the west side. As you see from the configuration of the plaza, we are opening up a diagonal path from Murray all the way to West Street, which will reduce the congestion currently going on at that intersection. Looking more closely at the plaza, we are going to preserve the 4 pin oak trees, which was mentioned before. And if you remember from the existing photo, the plaza currently is sunken from the sidewalk level. So working with the Department of City Planning, we have evaluated several options, and we are proposing a suspended pavement system, which will raise the grade to the sidewalk level, but also keep the condition healthy for the trees. The undulating seat wall also going to meander through the plaza, and with a variety of planting, it's going to create an oasis in this area that is will shield the area from the busyness that are Murray Street and West Street. The seat wall also is going to create pockets of seating, some with movable table and chairs, and some, as you've seen here, is going to be under the existing shade trees. For safety and comfort, we are also proposing a series of pedestrian scale lighting, as you can see from the right here. The existing trees and dense planting will provide some enclosure to the space away from the busy traffic, but also going to keep an open sightline for people to watch from the sidewalk and inside the plaza. We are also providing a series of public amenities such as drinking fountain, bike racks, lighting, and a trash receptacle. As you can see from this rendering, we are raising the raising the grade to the street level, which significantly improve the pedestrian experience in this area. Also, we are going to propose an artwork and educational signage, which we're going to be at the edge of Alexander Hamilton Place. It is an important but very subtle feature. One side of the sign is going to have some information about how Alexander Hamilton founded the bank and some of his accomplishments. And on the other side, as you see here, is going to be a portrait of him.
As it's been mentioned, as part of the overall project, the bank is incorporating security improvements, which have been based on a threat analysis and thorough coordination with DOT and NYPD. These improvements, as David mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, are going through the DOT revocable consent process, and this team will be returning to present that design in a few months. But to recap on the master plan, we believe this design accomplishes a significant public amenity for the neighborhood, creating more opportunities for seating where there previously was none, and provides the added environmental benefits of increased planting and shade. These bullets provide a quick high-level review of the project schedule and look ahead. As we've discussed, the two primary agency processes are through the City Department of City Planning and the City Planning Commission, and the DOT revocable consent process, which will be ongoing until about the middle of this year.
And just
I have to go,
summary,
so I just hope you can call on me fairly rapidly, and I'll mute myself now. It's Bruce.
Sure. Just in summary, what we're looking at is about 24,000 square foot public access area with over 500 linear square foot of seating, over 50 movable chairs, 15 movable tables, over 50 shade trees, 4 bicycle racks, and as we mentioned before, looking to preserve the mature trees that are currently in the location. We're excited about these improvements to all of our neighborhood, and we're willing to take questions.
Okay, thanks. So just to orient Land Use Committee members who will be voting tonight on a resolution, this application has been referred to the Community Board. Again, it's billed as a minor modification of a prior ULURP. It's post-ULURP application, so it's been referred to the Community Board for 45 days for review and comment before the City Planning Commission takes action. It was reviewed, however, by the City Planning Commission on 4th January, so we're on the clock, but well within our time. We'll come up with a resolution tonight that will sort of put together the bones of and get it ready for next week's full board. So turning to questions before we go down the list, first to Land Use Committee members and then others. I guess my question for the applicant team, I like the exterior improvement. I think that it's much needed in that area, and in that area quite often. I can see why you want to do that. I guess maybe there's a debate whether it could be had whether you're really adding any new publicly accessible space or whether you're really renovating and improving your commercial property as you need to position the property as best as you can. But my question is really looking at your application, having read through it, having listened to the January 4th presentation before the City Planning Commission. What I'm still not understanding, and I didn't hear it in your presentation tonight, is why you need the second action, which is removing the reference to a public lobby. I understand the arguments about the history and the position that the applicant has and whether it should be denominated as that or not. But why is that necessary in this application to achieve Part A of your application?
I can answer that. I think the reason for doing it is that it removes a source of confusion in our minds about the nature of that space as it was envisioned. And we think it's an important thing to do for that reason, as a kind of cleanup that follows on what was done in 1990, which was to eliminate the second floor public walkway, but inadvertently we believe there was an omission in not eliminating that reference, that single reference to the public lobby on the ground floor, which was the access point to the escalators and the stairs. And that's something that we would like to clear up and remove.
Okay, I mean, I still don't think that answers why that action has to take place now. Why you can't achieve Part A without Part B? And maybe the answer is that you can, and you're just taking that opportunity now. You know, my feeling on that point, on point B, I'll put it out there for the committee. You know, it's a legal conclusion, it's a legal argument that this applicant has, and you know, maybe the city has arguments of waiver or estoppel that it should be raising contrary to that. From my mind, I don't think we should be addressing it in the context of an application like this, and more or less dealing with the question of what is or is not a public lobby at this point. I'd say let the applicant and the city sort of fight that out later on. I don't know why we have to entertain that portion of the application just in order to get those improvements that I think are quite beautiful. So with that, let me go down the line for our committee members first. Colin, your hand was up, and then I saw Laura, Alice, and Vicky Cameron.
I'm actually happy to go second because I think Bruce said he had to go.
Okay, okay, Bruce, if you could be.
Yes, hi. I'll be brief. I do have to go. I'm not opposed to this project. I think it's an improvement. Again, I still don't understand what the functional difference is to the public in what you are altering inside. That's the first question. I have two more. What would be not the language, but the functional use value difference to the public in what you would change inside?
It's our view that there is no public space at the lobby level that the public lobby, so-called, as I said, is the element of the system which was eliminated in 1990. And all of this is doing is eliminating a single reference to that in order to clear up the record. And
so the public does not have free access to a public amenity space now inside.
It is our view that it was not intended as a public amenity space. It was not a POPS. There were no amenities provided for it. There were no hours provided for it. It was a space intended to allow access to an escalator to the second floor, and there is no more second floor walkway as of 1990. And so this is not about eliminating a POPs type space. It is about clearing the public record on this point.
So on this day, there is no functional difference. The public cannot have free access, or if they can, it would be the same exact use function for the public or non-use function as it has been, practically speaking. Is that true?
It is not open to the public.
Okay. And now also, like I say, I'm for this. I just want to clarify that the PR halo, this is one of the very, very few parts of our neighborhood, and boy, am I familiar with this corner, that has a rich amenity of public space. One of the very few. All of Battery Park City, all of Hudson River Park, Washington Market Park, which we cherish. As you know, Citicorp just did a beautiful expansion of their outdoor space down the block. So just as a technical matter, in terms of presentation, I want to note that it's not Walker Street and Broadway. So that being said, there's another august institution that you referenced, which is District Council 37, one of the great, great trade unions in the United States, activist. They have a historical visual presence there. They're renovating their building. Are they on board for this? Because that is their front yard. Their technical entrance is around the corner, but their front yard is de facto that plaza.
The answer to that is that we've had, the bank has had many discussions with DC 37. They are aware of plans, and we're continuing to discuss with them as needed about such things as the easements that allow them access to through the site to their the back of their building for loading and so forth and so on. They are a neighbor, and we're going to continue to work with them to deal with neighbor issues.
Clarificating answer, I appreciate it, but the question is, do they agree at this time, whether they have the legal right to or not, to your program? You said you're in discussion, but having been in discussion, DC 37 is one entity that would have an opinion, whether it's legally binding or not. Do they sign on to this at this point?
We have shown them the plans at multiple stages throughout. They're definitely aware of the plans. We haven't asked specifically for their approval because, you know, this is what we've been working with the city. But we've made in part of our design concept things like the separated driveway that we figured they would want, and they seem to appreciate as part of the design concept.
I have to leave. Thank you very much. I would just posit to the committee that we should get DC 37 to comment. This is one of the greatest, most progressive unions. It's huge. And I have not heard that they would like this or agree to it. Whether the land belongs to another entity or not, we're talking about tens and hundreds of thousands of people who belong to this union. The union has as rich a history as Bank of New York Mellon. And in addition, I think the Bank of New York Mellon should offer a corner of that for DC 37's historical or art related information, just as we have something for Alexander Hamilton. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Just to clear up a couple things before you go, and noted about DC 37, the question, I want to make clear that the applicant is not proposing any changes or modifications to the interior of the building. What they're proposing to do is to remove the denomination as a public lobby. And I think it's worth pointing out, I'm sure this is going to come up in some of the other questioning we'll hear, that it's been denominated as a public lobby for the better part of 30 years and never has been challenged to this point. In fact, the fact that it was viewed as a POPs and was featured prominently in Comptroller Stringer's 2017 report on DOB's an audit of DOB's compliance checks on POPs, and this specific site was highlighted in that report because of the egregious nature in which the then owner's security personnel kept the investigators for the comptroller's office out of the public space, and it created quite an uproar. And apparently, in response to that, the then owner allowed the public to come in and see the public lobby to some extent. But those of us who've tried to go over there and have a look-see for ourselves in the past few weeks have been denied access under the pretense of COVID. So there are not currently letting folks into this public lobby. It's a mess. But
thank you, Patrick. Wow. I think this presentation was coded. It's funny, I love the exterior stuff. I think it was coded. I think the language is disturbingly like I said, coded. I will try to contact DC 37 and try to get a straight answer from them. And I appreciate your clarification on the interior.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, so then to Colin, Vicky, I may have lost my order a little bit, so apologies. Colin, Vicky, Laura, Alice.
Yeah, Patrick, you stole a lot of my thunder. So I guess I'm going to clarify from the chair. So just to be clear, this POP wasn't, as I understand it, open for about 17 years, opened briefly in 2018 and is closed again. Is that correct?
Seems to be.
Yeah. And is the current challenge to the POP, is it in litigation now, and is that litigation only recent?
I'm not aware of any litigation, and I think what the applicant is asking us to do and the city of New York to do is to
litigate for them,
is to just waive it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess my only comment then is to the rest of the committee. I can't and won't vote for anything that would waive the rights to a POP, especially given the applicant hasn't been remotely cooperative in its duty as part of its original deal with the city to build the building in the first place. It just doesn't make any sense to me, especially given a huge amount of not being cooperative from 9/11 until 2018. That's, if my math is right, 17 or 16 years of not doing what the city asked it to do. So I think it takes a bit of guile to come to the community board and ask us to waive something they haven't been cooperative with in 17 of the last 20 years. That's my only comment.
Let's go to Laura, then Vicky, then Alice.
I'm on the list to speak.
You are, Joe. Okay, Laura, we're going to come back to you. So let's go to Vicky, then Alice, then Joe.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
I have a question to start with. You said that, what? Is Laura back?
Laura, we're going to come back to you.
Okay. So if in your presentation, it said you did not receive additional zoning for.
Laura, I can't mute you. Could you please mute yourself?
Okay. The question for David. So you said that you did not receive additional zoning floor area, correct?
Yes, that is correct. There's never been any kind of bonus floor area associated with this project.
But you say that you broke the setback and the height limit. You penetrated the sky exposure plane, right?
That is correct, but there was no.
Let me explain to you.
Yes.
The exposure plane is an angle. So if you are given a 45-degree angle and you follow 30-degree angle, that means you gain all that zoning floor area. In fact, I know for a fact that that is why the building looks so awkward, because had you followed, or had the original designers followed it, the building wouldn't look so awkward. So in fact, you did, let's just get this clarified, you did get additional zoning floor area because you did not follow the sky exposure plane. We have to agree on that.
We did not add to the floor area available under the underlying zoning at all.
You did, because I told you, if you have an angle that is supposed to be 30 degrees and you go 40, you steal all that area in the 15 degrees. So that is why you are given this thing. No one ever gives a public space without getting some benefit. So if you broke the sky exposure plane, that means you gained, you pushed out of the envelope. That by its nature means you got more ZFA. So I want everyone to understand, you did, you have to, unless I'm completely crazy after.
We would be happy to provide you with the original approvals, which show that there was no such relationship between the space and the waiver of the sky exposure plane. The space was at that time intended to implement a plan that the city had to create elevated public walkways connecting across streets a variety of buildings in the area. And the city required the building to include a portion of that elevated walkway, which was not a bonus space.
No, it says here, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead, sorry. It says in your paperwork that you had modification of setback and height regulations. And that is a direct response to getting more zoning floor area, which is why you got the PUP. Anyways, I'm going to move on to my second point. I'm assuming that the dashed line is on your plan, suggesting that the building does not sit on the property line, right? The current building does not occupy the full property. So the red dashed line between the exterior of the building and the red dashed line, that belongs to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the other part. So all you're really doing is that you've got a fairly unfriendly building, and now you are humanizing it, and you are enlivening your space around the building, and this is where we agree. The building is top heavy, and it's bulky, and it just sits there like a shipwreck. So now, thank you very much for proposing to do something decent between your property, between the building and your property line. But in terms of you coming here and claiming that you did not get additional square footage, you have been not a very good steward of the public space. I tried to go in there last week, and my goodness, had I stayed another 7 minutes, I think the NYPD would have come. I don't like being, made a fool of and spoken to as if I don't understand anything. So I'm sorry. I want to thank you for proposing this. But without a doubt, this is otherwise going to be a land grab if we go along with this. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Vicki. Alice, your turn.
Hi, all. It's a clever presentation. It's what I expected. We would be looking at the very handsome looking plaza, albeit I think smaller than the actual public space plaza that's there currently in the corner. But really what's at stake here is indeed the first part of the presentation, which was kind of glazed over as the removal of the word public lobby from the ground floor plan is, I think, if I'm understanding, the removal of the designation of the public space as a public space in the city's docket of public spaces. As Patrick well described, this has been in the docket for over 22 years, I think, and in fact is very much an understood public space. And I was surprised not to see the drawings that were shared with the Department of City Planning, I'm just screenshot, and thanks, Diana, for pulling these up, just so that the public and our committee can understand a little bit of what really was being provided to the community originally during the course of history here from the Washington Street urban renewal plans up until 1990, I guess. when a lot of this didn't get built. So as many of you know, there was a whole, hope to separate pedestrian and vehicular circulation through this kind of interesting idea of having a second level, which would be accessed by the public. And what you're seeing here is the second floor plan of the building from the 1980 special permit plans, which show the escalator that would have gone down to the public lobby that we now access, and then something called a tenant lobby, which was the area for the bank. I think it was Irving Trust at the point, which is designated as tenant lobby. And if you can go to that other plan, and so you'll see the yellow boxes are the three bridges that were to access to the north, south, and west different areas. So one was part of the urban renewal plan, one was Battery Park City, and one would have been 7 World Trade Center. So on the public lobby that is in question here, which is indeed public, which has indeed has never been questioned before, and one could well understand the bank's interest in privatizing it, but it is a public lobby, and I think Patrick raises a good point. If that's going to be put into question, then we need to do it at a different time and certainly not look at it as a kind of exchange for some sprucing up of public plazas. Anyway, here, the public lobby, you can see very clearly, is designated. And so it is indeed, as David says, a vestige, but it is, I would argue, a very small vestige of what was promised to the public. And promised it was. It was promised in the lease. It was promised in public, in the CPC reports. And I think it's frankly egregious to ask the community or the city to deaccession this space as an exchange. If the bank wants to put it upon themselves to do what they all along should have done, which is the beautifying of Greenwich Street, then that's grand. And there's plenty of things I have about that I'd love to ask, but I'm going to just make my main point about a call for not deaccessioning public space. And in fact, it's a very rare public space in the city because it is an interior space. And it is a very handsome one. And I just want to point out that these plans, and I also want to point out, specific reference to this, it's kind of been covered to me. There was in the 1989 City Planning Commission reports, they actually quote from our Community Board 1's statement. And it says, and I quote, CP1 approves the concept of eliminating the second floor pedestrian connection. Sorry, I have to bring my own screen here. At 101 Barclay Street, only if the sum of money equal to the sum of the cost of building the second floor easement and amount of franchise taxes which would have been paid for such a bridge be placed into an interest-bearing account, which shall be used for finishing the entirety of Greenwich Street. So the point of me reading this, and there are many references similar, not specifically to our CB statement, which I thought was interesting, is that, of course, then and now, people understood this as a public amenity and something that they should even be paid back for in the case of the bridge if it were going to be deaccessioned and removed. And also to the question of whether the public really understood this as a public use, I think in the lease agreement itself in 1980, it states, and with hours, it says during 8 to 6 p.m., it says 10 hours, 8 to 6 p.m., the tenant shall afford the public exit from an entrance to the building through the main ground level entrance at or near Barclay Street. Well, that is precisely what's here. So whether it went up to a second floor level, I could only say it's too bad it didn't. It's too bad we lost that whole mezzanine. It's too bad we lost all the bridges, but we damn well shouldn't be losing the interior space. So that I get off my soapbox now. David, thanks for listening. I would love to have David, who of course was the attorney at the Department of City Planning, to answer one question I have about this, which is what happened to the public, to Park Place? In other words, when Park Place, the street that you can see here to the right, right off Greenwich, was closed down in the creation of this building, what happened to that? And was the community given anything in exchange for the closing of Park Place. Of course, I know Washington Street was also closed much earlier, but I never read anything about Park Place, and I wonder if you or anyone else could speak to that.
I don't know. I don't know the history of Park Place at the time of its closure.
But would a city street being covered, closed, wouldn't that trigger some sort of exchange to the public in terms of
Yeah, you have to remember this was city property.
Right.
It was a city property that was leased to the bank.
So once the bank, so there would be no need to.
No, it was ground leased. It was ground leased to Irving Trust, and then BNY Mellon came in. So there wouldn't have been anything like that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll hold off. I do have a lot of questions on the actual exterior amenities as a separate part of the application, but I'll wait. Thanks.
That's great. And we'll come back around, Alice, for a second round. I have a question on that too. So moving to Joe Lerner and then Rosa.
I want to thank my colleagues. They asked all the questions I was going to ask, so now I can go back to my drinking. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Rosa.
Thank you very much. Just for ease of my comprehension of the situation, I'd like to separate the two issues, the exterior and the interior. I happen to walk by here many times a week, and I really welcome these modifications. I think that it's turning something that's a really sort of blank and boring pedestrian experience that's sort of, unfriendly into something that's engaging and welcoming and interesting. So I laud this effort, and I hope that it is successful. Having walked by here so often, and I will absolutely try to go and check out the interior space tomorrow on my next walk by here. But I would say that prior to tonight, I actually had zero idea that there was a public space or a public lobby or anything even remotely public within the interior of that building. If there is theoretically, then I don't think that there was any signage to indicate that there was, and it's definitely not indicated in any kind of visual way that would let the public know that they would be welcome there. So it's sort of like a secret that you have to be part of a very exclusive club to know about. And I guess there are several members on our community board that are part of that secret club, but it's definitely not something that's patently aware to the public in general. On the interior portion, I would say that to me, it seems like sort of black and white, frankly. It's really simple. If BNY was given something in exchange for public access to the interior space, then the public access must be maintained. And that was just the agreement, right? So, or the benefits received in exchange for the public access should be revoked. And to follow up on Vicky's comment, while you may not have gained zoning square footage, you did gain volume if you were able to exceed the building height and the building envelope. And what that means is you gained value, right? Because there's a difference between, let's say, a 10-foot floor to floor and a 15-foot floor to floor. And exceeding the building envelope allows you to take advantage of that and have more value based on your ability to exceed the envelope. So I would actually personally have zero objection to you taking the current public lobby private, if so long as you respected the original building envelope and reverted the building back to that envelope if you were willing to do so. But I think, frankly, the benefit that you have of leaving the building as it is means that you should maintain, respect the agreement and, give the public their space if it is indeed public space, which is what the agreement is. So that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosa. Laura, coming back to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So is it okay if I comment on the outdoor space, or are we still focused more on the inside issue?
Comment on whatever you like.
Oh, okay. So I think obviously the outdoor space is a huge improvement over the blank sidewalk that's there. be even more green, more like in front of Goldman Sachs, where you just have this feeling of like moving between the vegetation. I know you have it on one corner, but there's still a lot more paving around the building on the other perimeter areas. And I think it could be much more immersive. I'm also concerned about all of those cedars. I think they're going to become skateboarding venues. And I would take a look at that. I know that, when we've proposed seating like that on other public open space projects in front of developments, there's been a lot of concern about that. My other question is, like, what is the relationship between what's going on in the lobby and the outdoor spaces? And I mean, I realize you want to keep the lobby completely private, but actually, I think the outdoor spaces would be much more functional if they had a relationship to the indoor, ideally public space, so that, for example, you could go into the lobby and get a sandwich or a cappuccino or something, and then go outside and sit in one of these spaces. And I think it would also help kind of animate those spaces so that they, in fact, were used more by the community, because like right now on this part of Greenwich Street, it's just like a big no man's land. Like it doesn't have the charm of a few blocks north of there, where you can, get a coffee, like you go inside, you get a coffee, then you go sit outside on a more human scaled streetscape. And I think that's what this needs. And, the World Trade Center to the south doesn't have that either. So, I guess if you were going to solve this indoor outdoor situation in an integrated way, that would be my recommendation. I don't know. Does that make sense? People?
Question. I think it's a question to the applicant team. At least an invitation to comment.
I can raise something on the skateboarders, and I'll let David Karnofsky, but just real quickly on the skateboarding, we have definitely been aware of, because the undulating nature. And so we would have, and Gloria or Greg could go into the specifics, but we would have designs to prevent or to deter skateboarding on the seating. I don't know if Gloria.
I just have to say, like, I know it looks nice in the renderings, but I'm concerned it's going to have a kind of a cold feeling. I mean, the building is blank and cold. I think that it needs more density of vegetation, and I think maybe the seating should be more broken up so that it feels a little more intimate and like less concrete, less of this white concrete. Maybe it could even be something more colorful and modern. I think, it's such a no man's land on that corner. Like people don't go there. So I really feel like, it could become a skateboarder haven. And I think if you don't put a cafe there or something to really animate it or program it, it's like, I don't know how it might just be used for getting high. I think you really have to think about the programming of it. It needs a quote unquote owner, like a Starbucks or sandwich shop or something nearby that has eyes on it. I don't know if other people agree with that, but I don't know, like when I go there to get the city bike there, it's like really empty.
I don't know if you could, yes, I guess to jump in here, Patrick, or how is?
Yeah, and actually, Laura, this could segue to a question that I had regarding that plaza at the northwest corner of Murray and West. I guess it's going to be called the Alexander Hamilton Plaza. The question was raised before the City Planning Commission, and I think it bears raising again here to see if we can get a clearer answer. Currently, there's a city bike station in that plaza area, and I will tell you that it is a heavily utilized station. There are other docking stations within a couple of blocks, one way or the other. But those of us coming from FIDI especially, and anyone who has kids who practice at the Battery ball fields know that's an important stop. So question to the applicant team is, what's going to happen to that? Do you have any clarity around whether that will be relocated either somewhere within your plaza or nearby?
I can speak to that. My name is Tanya, and I'm an attorney with the Bank of New York Mellon. I'm also a regular City Bike user, so I use it as well. And our contract allows it to be ended with City Bike on 90 days notice. And our plan is to work with City Bike to allow them to stay as long as possible until the construction begins.
How about permanently though, after the construction ends?
Well, the City Bikes are right in the location where the work will happen, so that it's not part of the project.
Yeah, but they should be put back, just to follow up on what Patrick's saying, is they should be built, integrated into this plan. You guys have so much sidewalk space, and it's a critical location for the bikes.
So I'm just going to pop in here and say, if that's what we want, then that should go into a resolution, because I can't tell you how many presentations we've had with DOT saying that they want to expand. So Tanya, I appreciate what you're saying, but understand what the community is saying and what DOT has already said to us, so that your comments are not congruous with what's being told to us in terms of need and usage.
We'll take that back to the team. Thank you.
Okay. Alice.
So now that we've gotten out of the interior into the exterior, and I couldn't applaud Laura's comment more about the idea of having a wonderful opportunity to have a real dialogue between the interior public space and the exterior. Could you just identify on a floor plan where exactly the additional new public space is being created that didn't already belong to the bank? You could just point.
Greg or Gloria, do you want to, you pulled up the thing. Can you use your pointer to point out?
Sorry, my mouse was having some technical difficulty. So the public access area will be around the building, basically along the property line, but skipping the driveway.
I'm sorry, but you had mentioned you were creating new public space, and I just was curious what you meant to new public space exactly. Or is it just renovating existing public space? Is that more accurate?
Yeah, that would, we are using the existing public space that is in front of the building and adding more amenities and plantings in front of it.
Okay, so there's no new space that's being created.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And then you mentioned, or one of you mentioned, that there was a need for open space, and that, you know, there were large open spaces, but not smaller ones. And I have to say, I find it extraordinary that you leave out the fact that across Murray Street, right there at the top edge of the page, is a very large, almost 11,000 square foot Pops, almost directly across from the one you're proposing at 111 Murray Street, which is a beautifully designed KPF building. Well, I'm going to say beautiful, but anyways, it's a very lovely design Pops at that location directly across the street. So I would say, in fairness in your presentation, that should be noted, and the Pops should be shown, because in fact, there is a dialogue that could be created between these two. And I would also argue that that Pops is far more successful in that it has a very powerful barrier in the building between the highway and it. Here, I'm so surprised that the design does not incorporate some sort of barrier to what is really unpleasant about any of us who've spent any time there, besides picking up a bike, which is the West Street. And all of the, and the existing trees are, I'm glad they're being kept, but there's just no, it doesn't seem like that corner is really being addressed as to where the wind and the noise and the sort of less desirable aspects of that space are sort of going to be sheltered. So I just, those are 2 points. So I would, just want to make sure the committee understands that there is a very lovely 12,000 square foot box directly across the street, and to a call for maybe thinking about a design that buffers you better from the West Street. And lastly, it looks like, if I'm looking at the drawings that you provided to DCP that are not here, that there's a curb cut. So you've added a curb cut, and it looks like the opening for the curb cuts, it has actually reduced the size slightly of this plaza area. Is that correct?
Well,
Sorry, Jeremy was going to say something.
yes, hi, Jeremy Posen, Fried Frank. The area where the curb cuts are located is not currently public. It is open, but it is not designated as a PAA space or any other public designation for it. So I just want to correct that. With respect to the curb cut, Gloria or Greg can comment on the width of the existing curb cut relative to the width of the now bifurcated curb cut, but I believe they are equal or very close to equal.
I'm just asking to be more specific. Was the public area, the PAA, reduced in any way to add the curb cut? Is it now a little smaller, or is it? It looks like it is. So I just wanted a confirmation of that.
I don't believe the PAA would be larger if there was a single curb cut. I think it would be the same square footage.
With 2 curb cuts.
2 curb cuts versus one curb cut would not alter the amount of square footage of the PAA.
Okay. And then could you just describe how many more bollards? It feels a little like Fort Knox over here. I see there's a security box of some sort in the lower, at the south end of the plan. There's a little white box, and then you have a lot of bollards. Could you just describe? Is that white box security? I thought I read that somewhere. What are those white boxes? Sorry.
Yes, those are security booths. Behind those booths are the bank's loading berths and loading docks. And as this is a highly sensitive area, and per New York the New York Police Department's guidance, the bollards as well as the security booths will provide the bank with additional security given the sensitive location of this building.
Well, I guess all the buildings down here are pretty sensitive locations, but are there 3 of these security boxes on the public sidewalk? Is that what I'm saying?
There are none on the public sidewalk. There are 2 within the property line that are located to the west of the existing building. And the white box on Greenwich Street is an existing newsstand that will remain.
Okay, it's always good to be clear as to what those are. So you've added to your plan 2 security pavilions, if you will. These are full scale. What are they?
I believe they already exist today.
Okay.
David, is that correct?
Yes, they exist today,
Yes.
Jeremy.
Okay, thanks. And then lastly, how many bollards are being added here to this plan?
The bollards are not part of this application and will be in front of the community board as a separate application. I can get you that information as to the quantity right now. I don't know, Greg, do we know specifically how many there are? I'm not sure if we know how many there will be, but the spacing of the bollards and the location of the bollards has been laid out in connection with dialogue, in connection with existing guidance from DOT, both state and city, as well as the New York Police Department.
Is there something going on in this bank that's more in need of security than any other bank, or is this just like, any other bank? I'm just curious.
I think the proximity to the World Trade Center site, as well as West Street, I think adds a dimension of security that the PD as well as the bank's internal management has concluded is deserving of this level of security.
And last question, could you just describe what's going on with the parking? Is that existing? Is that proposed? Is that all existing? I'm sorry, I don't
There is no parking on the zoning lot.
But the parking that's shown to the right of the lot, that's on Greenwich Street. I'm just.
Greg, is that existing parking, striped parking?
To clarify, the striping, the diagonal striping shown on Granite Street in this graphic is actually, that will be the striping done by the DDC DOT project, along with those extensions at the crosswalks.
So this is a DOT project that's not related to the bank that we will be reviewing later. This has nothing to do with the bank proposal.
That's correct.
Well, let's be clear. The bollards are coming back to you. The sidewalk expansion and enlargement at the corners, as well as the striping, is a DOT DDC project.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Tammy, I see your hands up.
Thank you. I did want to ask, could you please show the new renderings, not this one for the security bollards, but the others for the streetscape for Greenwich and the sides?
This one?
Well, do you have any others that are similar to that?
Let me just exit full screen so I can move the pages much easier. We have one that is closer on this side. Sorry, this is smaller.
That's fine.
So this is showing Greenwich Street. Yeah.
Can you go to the other one that had the tiny pictures on it? Right. So that's okay. This will get where I'm going. So one of the questions I wondered, and especially in light of the conversation of not having the city bike station, is to whether or not the use of bollards could be limited by a more creative landscape and look at the urban architecture. It's a little disappointing to see the entire area surrounded by bollards like a fortress versus using intelligent urban landscape use with, for example, the bike racks incorporated into a usage on the sidewalks. And the bollards are all beyond the property line. And I understand that, I believe at least, based on what I'm looking at here, they're in the city. Aren't they in the city right of way on the public sidewalk, not on your property line?
I believe that's correct.
Yes, they're in the right of way.
So again, I think my question would be to come back to you and say, I'm not really sure why and again, this is yours coming back to us, but instead of railing the entire public right of way with bollards, why isn't there a more creative look at usage in both the concrete planters and the landscape to truly turn that area into a very interesting corner between Greenwich and Murray and even Barclay, to have something so it does not look like it's a ring of fencing, which is essentially what the bollards are, but it doesn't seem at all creative to me when I look at it. You had a real opportunity to take your curvature and put some of them out into the public way. If you're at least working with, as you said, DOT and the city on this, why isn't your plan to, quote unquote, sort of soften the exterior, really pull to the edges in a more creative way?
So I'll know that one thing about this
we can
is,
take that back and
obviously
we can take. I'm sorry, David. It's Liz Muscat. We can take that back and look at it. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things is, though, just as Jeremy said, it's part of a revocable consent process. But we are the headquarters of a globally systemic bank. We are one of the 8 GSIBs, as identified by the Treasury Department. But the one thing though is that, as you know, the current state of affairs is there are those concrete planters that are in the middle of the sidewalk essentially. And so one of the things.
Hang on. I appreciate where you're going, and I know you need security, but think about your neighbor across the street on West Street. Take a look at where Goldman Sachs, yes, they have bollards along the side where their delivery truck, they have bollards intelligently implanted around their driveway, but you don't get the feeling when you come up along West Street that it's a barricaded area. They've taken the green to the corner, to the bikeways, and they've incorporated it into the landscape, at least on the West Street side, in a far more user-friendly way. So that is my challenge to you, because I look at this and say you've done an excellent job of securing your building, and we don't deny that you may need security, whatever your, whatever NYPD and things say. But what I am saying is it's not creative, and I would bound to say, I mean, there are so many ways with resiliency, with bioswales, with other things that you could surround the building to pull the greenery to streetscape that would quite frankly be a lot more pleasant. All right, so that's for me around those, including the build out that you have of your sidewalk area to make the front of your building, which is your new entrance on Greenwich, far more beautiful.
Sure.
So
well taken. I think one of the. Go ahead.
I know you can't answer me here, and I know you have to go back and balance, but it is a strong concern, right? The other thing is, I 100% think that the corner that you're offering to redevelop on West Street does not have the same feeling, tone, and tenor of any of the lush greenery that you're putting towards your front entrance. So it is, yes, it will be lovely to be repaved, and I guarantee my kid on their scooter will really like it. However, point taken to the community, in order to really be a public amenity, green, and the bikes are really urgently important, and according to DOT, that is something that they are not willing to compromise on. So I'm surprised even that they haven't told you that it could come out, or that there was no dialogue with them. I find that a bit surprising. And lastly, I sat through a very, very fantastic controller's report on POPs years ago at the borough president's office, which at this point feels like it was a century ago simply because of COVID. But there was no doubt in the city's mind that your lobby was a POP. It was widely discussed. It was widely reported. I appreciate where you're going, and I suspect some of it may be guided through your need for security. But I will stand with my colleagues on the board to say that lobby is a POP. In all documentation, it's a POP, which means it's not just a lobby. And otherwise, to say that the city's gotten it wrong for decades, it's a nice spin, but I would call that a little bit of fake news. So, I mean, we really do want to encourage and know you're going to be here for a long while. I would love to see some landscape architecture outside that brings the idea of security into a much different place. And again, that integrates, much like people are saying, that you could get a cup of coffee from the inside and sit outside, not only for obviously what we believe is a public lobby, but for your own people who occupy that building. Because I'm not probably getting something at the newsstand there, but it would be nice to be able to sit out there. And the other thing is, you usually on the block on Greenwich, there's quite often a street vendors there. I would surmise that those bollards would prevent street vendors from being able to operate. Did you incorporate any idea about how that would work with your given new design?
This is Jeremy. It's our understanding that the street vendors are currently located within the city right of way, and I mentioned before, the city right of way. This application does not address or touch the city right of way. So we did not address how the vendors will operate in the future.
I appreciate that, and thank you, Jeremy. But it's when you come to us saying it's a master plan and we see bollards and we see the removal of the city bike station, whether it's a separate application to come, you're presenting it as a master plan. So I'm asking about the things that need to be incorporated, because now if the bollards are in the public right of way, and is there room left for the street vendors? Have you purposely decided to redesign this with no process? Will the street vendors be allowed to be closer in the green area? Those are questions I'd want to know.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I don't see any other committee members. It looks like some folks still have their hand up from before. Let's go to the public and see if we have any questions or comments there before the committee.
Can't hear Patrick, can we?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Patrick.
Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak?
I don't see any hands up, but I know that Taina is here from the Downtown Alliance, so I'm going to go to her. Hey, Taina?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. How are you guys? It's been a long night. So I'm just hi, thank you so much. So I'm just gonna read a very, very brief statement that we want to give tonight in response to the application. So I'll read it, and if people have any questions, that would be fine too. So the Bank of New York Mellon's proposed redesign of the public space at 240 Greenwich Street would serve to beautify the area, improve the pedestrian experience on Greenwich Street, and upgrade the public realm downtown. The renderings are beautiful and show an addition of much needed greenery and seating to the area. The proposed public plaza along West Street is thoughtfully designed. It would transform a dreary, underutilized area into a welcoming, landscaped public space. As you may know, the Alliance has been providing free Wi-Fi throughout the district for several years. We have offered and are working with Bank of New York to install free Wi-Fi service in the plaza for the public to use when the project is completed. Even the best designed public spaces are only amenities to the community if they are easily and safely accessible. In the past, as documented in an audit by Comptroller Stringer that I think Patrick referenced earlier, there have been some issues with access to the existing public space in the lobby of the building. This has given rise to concerns, as raised tonight and in the past, in the community regarding existing and future access. We urge Bank of New York to work with the community board to address these concerns and to ensure that the public will have appropriate and safe access to all public spaces at 240 Greenwich Street in accordance with all applicable rules and regulations. We look forward to seeing these upgrades approved and enacted to the betterment of Lower Manhattan. Thank you.
Thank you, Taina.
And thank you for hanging in with us, Taina.
I know. I feel like I needed to be like Joseph Lerner and have a cocktail. I feel like I missed out. But yeah.
Come to the holiday. You're welcome to come to our holiday party. I'll extend a cocktail invitation.
We need a COVID post party. Anyway. Yeah.
Exactly.
No problem.
Would you please email that testimony and written to Diana? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. I see a couple of other committee members have raised their hand in the meantime. Francis Curtis, Francis, would you like to speak?
Hi, I'm not a committee member, but I do have a couple of comments. I support everything that Bruce said in terms of wondering if the question or DC 37 has been entered as a stakeholder, because there is a lot of activity that goes. I know they're renovating their building right now, but when it's up and running, there will be a lot of activity going on in that building. So I'm wondering if there has been any dialogue with the leadership at DC 37 regarding how that space is going to be utilized. I do support the improvement, and as Tammy said, the design looks a little, on one corner looks a lot different than the design on the other corner. And if they could bring it up to the same level, that would probably make it a nicer area. That city bike area is definitely utilized a lot, especially by the people that come across from Goldman Sachs and the other buildings across the other side of West Street. So that is a very active city bike area. So I'm wondering, I'm sure, well, I think that they should look into making some sort of accommodations to make sure that it gets put back there. But and all of that to say, I worked in that 125 Barclay at DC 37 for a long time. And I do remember when I first started working there, I used to go into 101 Barclay and buy coffee in the lobby. And I'm not sure whether it's probably post 9/11 when they stopped letting us go into the lobby. And we were all shocked, all of us who worked in the building, because we didn't have, it was a nice coffee stand there, and they had really nice coffee. So we would go in there and get our coffee before we went to 125 Barclay Street. And then it abruptly stopped. And I believe it was probably after 9/11, and we were probably given reasons of security at that time. But it was open. It was open because people used to walk through there and to get to work through the building. So, but that's my comment.
Thanks. Okay. Just double checking, Laura, Joe, or Tammy, your hands are up, but I think that's from before. Speak now or forever. All right. Okay, I see.
Patrick, I have one question. Could we get answered, just because I think it's going to come up? Is there some sort of quid pro quo here? I mean, if we say that with all of the different conditions on the exterior renovations, we have to accept that we're closing down the public lobby, or is it possible to believe that we could still have the open interior lobby as well as the exterior improvements? Are they coming in as a pair? I'm not sure I understand how this is.
Well, yeah,
how this is coming.
And it'd be helpful to get some clarification on that from the applicant team. That's why I asked that question at
Yeah.
the outset.
With all respect, we believe, based on our review of the record, that there is no POPs-like space in the interior of the building. And as I said before, the purpose of the change is to clean up that record to reflect what happened in 1990 when the walkway was eliminated, to which the so-called public lobby was the access point. So I think we just respectfully disagree with your assessment of the situation with regard to the status of that space. And that's where we are.
Well, I think the question, though, just to put it rather bluntly, is are these improvements going to happen if you don't get sub B, which is the removal of the designation as a public lobby?
I think that's something we'll have to discuss, but I think that we've made our position clear about what this is and what it isn't. And we really do believe that it's not a POPs, that it was never designed with amenities. It has none of the characteristics of a POPs, and that it's not a public space.
Well, for the record, and David, I know you're representing the bank here, the Municipal Art Society and Gerald Caden, who had written the definitive text on POPs, certainly don't agree with that assessment, and nor did the last 30 years of history, confirm that that would be true. So I have to say it's a point that we really need to grapple with.
I just note that the book itself says that there's considerable uncertainty about the status. And so it's not as clear as you suggest in the book.
Well, as of last week, Gerald said it was indeed a privately owned public space.
Yeah, well, that's Gerald, and then there's us, and then there's the city of New York. We have great respect for Gerald, but he has his own views, and we have ours, and we've looked at the record very carefully, as Gerald did, and reached a different conclusion than he apparently has.
All right. Well, I think that's a very okay.
Patrick?
Yeah, Vicky, hang on one second. I see Detta has her hand up and she hasn't gone yet.
My question was about the 4 bike racks that he said would be part of that outdoor space, and I wondered, each bike rack, how does it fit?
Gloria or Greg, do you know?
No, we'd have to get back to you on that number. How many bikes are in the current bike rack?
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if each rack though was for multiple bikes.
It's
for multiple bikes. The bike rack is for multiple bikes. I think we just need to get back to you with the number.
Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Vicki, one more point, and then let's
just
vote on a resolution.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify again. I know that it's David who keeps saying this isn't a POP, but you're using in your document language like modification of setback and heights. Look, there's a zoning law. You either comply or you don't. So clearly, you didn't comply, and therefore you got a concession. We had to give a concession. So if you did not get a POPs as a concession, what did you get? How do you interpret that? Because there's no way, if you break the zoning, that they just go, oh, okay, it's a modification of zoning. You know that's not how the law works.
We'd be glad to provide you with a report that shows the basis on which the heightened setback waiver was granted. And it was granted based on findings related to light and air and similar considerations, not on the basis of providing the public walkway. The public walkway was required pursuant to the urban renewal plan, had nothing to do with the heightened setback requirements. The city then abandoned public walkway as an element of the urban renewal plan, and that's when it was eliminated in 1990. So it had nothing to do with the heightened setback waiver, frankly. It had to do with the urban renewal plan that was in effect at that time.
Right, but you did not comply with the setback, the height, and the height regulations. You did not comply with the sky exposure plane. You just made a bigger, thicker, darker shadow casting building. That's what it needs to penetrate. So if you did not comply with this, what did you have to do in exchange? If you have to agree to a POP?
Yeah, I think the record shows that there was no exchange. What there was a demonstration to the Planning Commission that findings with respect to light and air and the effect on the surrounding area were met, and therefore the Planning Commission granted the waivers to facilitate the building. The public walkway was a separate matter required at that time pursuant to the urban renewal plan and implemented as part of the building. And then the urban renewal plan was changed and it was eliminated. And that's really the history.
All right, if I can, I think we could argue about this all night long. The applicant has their position. It's set forth in their application. They call this vestigial and that this was the result of an inadvertent error.
Yes.
An argument can be made that the city of New York has legal defenses that it can and in fact must raise, and that this really isn't the forum to sort of hash that out. Yeah. I think really the point is that as far as I can see, there's really no good reason that we or the city of New York should be dealing with that portion of it in this application or giving away any currently denominated public space in the context of this application. It's something they should fight in a different forum. And I think having the two pieces of the action coupled together I've heard no good reasons tonight why they need to be coupled together. We can like one part of it and dislike the other part of it. So with that, I would.
Hey, Patrick, I'm sorry. Just really quick question. Has the applicant reached out to the city at all, or are we the first municipal entity they've contacted about this? This is
sure, but I kind of have some thoughts on that. Go ahead.
This is a fairly sizable difference of opinion. I can't possibly believe that the community board is the first municipal entity that they've contacted or tried to liaise with this. Have you reached out to the city? Have you opened any discussions on this?
We have been working with the Department of City Planning for a long time on this proposal, and I cannot speak here tonight for the department, but obviously the department has made its own assessment of the situation regarding the public lobby in connection with the processing of this application, and I suggest that you speak to them about their assessment.
Well, we're talking to you. I just find this incredibly irregular, and I completely agree with Patrick, and I don't think we should entertain this at all. Thanks.
I would bite at the bait a little bit. Allison, I see you're on. Allison Brown from the Department of City Planning.
I was going to ask her.
I was just going to make clear that, you know, as David said, you know, we've been in communication with this project for some time. The application was reviewed by the City Planning Commission on earlier this month. And as a minor modification proposal, it is a courtesy referral, non-ULERT referral to the community board. So yes, the Department of City Planning and the City Planning Commission have reviewed the project. I'd be happy to provide in the chat a link to the presentation that I myself made to the commission just a few weeks ago on this project.
I think many of us have seen the presentation. If I can just jump in and ask, so is the Department of City Planning in accord with the idea that the public lobby of 101 Barclay is no longer a privately owned public space and should be deaccessioned and not noted as such from here on in?
What is in front of the commission right now is the proposal that is in front of you, which is the removal of the public lobby label from the drawings, as well as the proposed creation of the public access area in the existing open space on the site. As I was just going to say, as I think my presentation suggests, the record is, the record is unclear and quite tenuous of what the true status of this space is. And we're striving for a solution that provides us certainty as well as, you know, what we think is a public amenity on the site, which would be the public access area.
So as I just heard the applicant's attorney represent to us, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't want to mischaracterize what council has relayed, I heard that DCP is in agreement with the applicant that this is in effect vestigial and was the result of an inadvertent error. Is that right or no?
Yes, I mean, the public lobby, as designated on the plans, has no features tied to what we would typically see as a POPs. It is not the result of a floor area bonus. There are no required amenities or improvements as part of the public lobby that you would typically see. We also have nothing really on the record to indicate, you know, why it was deemed a POPs other than this public lobby label. It's a very tenuous record versus many other POPs we see in the city. There are several ties that we can point to that make it clear that the reason that the space is a POPs. You know, there was a bonus, there is something in a restricted declaration, and in this case, that is not the case.
So I understand the dispute and the factual parts of the dispute, Allison. I'm going to press you a little bit. The conclusion that the applicant's attorney just represented, that DCP agrees that this isn't.
Patrick, I didn't say that. I said that you would have to speak to the Department of City Planning to understand their assessment. I did not represent their views, please.
Okay.
We do agree with the applicant team that, I don't think that we can definitively say this was an error, but it is very unclear why on earth a ground floor public lobby that was only put in place, from what you can tell in the record, to access a second floor walkway, and then later on the second floor walkway requirement was removed, why the public lobby would need to remain when its only purpose, as described in the record, that we can find was to access the second floor.
But weren't all of these amenities that you described, these pedestrian easements at the second floor, were all immense public spaces that were not ever built. And so actually the developer got away with spending no money and following through on none of those plans. And the only thing that's left for the public that was promised is that public lobby. And why would the application and the plans note a public lobby versus a tenant lobby on two separate areas? Clearly, this was considered for the public, and the tenant lobby was a very distinct and discrete space that's indicated as such. So I don't understand how the history here of trying to create a second level, albeit back in 1961, is simply, and all right through to 1990, is simply being disregarded. This was supposed to be for the public, pedestrian access. And the fact that it was never built and that this is the only vestige that remains seems like a very odd conclusion to draw as its unworthiness as a public space.
Hey, Patrick, my last thought on this. It makes sense to me to have a resolution that reflects that any remediation on the status when pops can't be settled with the community board and has to be settled between the applicant and the city. This just isn't right that we take this up.
I mean, I agree. I think there are waiver and estoppel issues that the city has to address.
I mean, ultimately, what we were being asked, Patrick, it seems, is to decide whether you want the outside, stuff that's being provided here, or you want the inside. I mean, maybe you argue for one versus the other. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, that I wonder if that's what it's going to come down to. You're looking at almost as
well. That is a fantastic segue. Actually, I do think we should put together a resolution. And if I'm hearing the sense of the committee correctly, it sounds like we reject the notion that we have to accept, or we have to accept the coupling of these two actions, which are really distinct actions, and we can express that to recommend to the CPC a no on modification to subpart B, which is removing the designation as a public lobby, while still voting to recommend that we support sub A, which are the modifications that relate to the improvements on the exterior. I think we can do both. And if I'm hearing everybody right, I think that's sort of where we're headed with making sure to include specific asks. For example, Laura pointed out that it would be great to take this opportunity to integrate that public lobby with the proposed improvements to the exterior. I've heard a number of calls, including my own, for re-inclusion of the city bike station at some point in the design, somewhere within the newly renovated property. I've also heard that DC 37 should weigh in as a major stakeholder, right for the plaza, and that very much we hate the bollards. I know it's not part of the application now, but it's worth putting in there that yes, as appeared in the design, we hate the bollards, and then we think some sort of vegetation or other type of design element to help with the security aspect, but not be bollards, would be useful.
Yes.
Have I missed anything?
Well, I think a lot of the history that we've talked about and all I'd like to see included in the resolution and the, whereas aspect of the resolution, describing a little bit of why our position is what it is vis-a-vis our belief that this is indeed a public space, including Francis's wonderful comments of having actually used it for many years, and things like that should be included, I would ask.
I would agree. I think we need to include a fair amount of that detail.
I also noted just on these exterior arrangements that there is a little more attention to the consideration of some sort of better buffer on the Alexander Hamilton Plaza from West Street.
Can you be more specific what you mean by that?
Well, I'm getting involved in the design of it, but I just mean there's no buffer. There's maybe the addition of trees, maybe some sort of, usually it would be through landscaping, that you would have some division that's much more clear as to the street. West Street is a very noisy, windy spot. I'm just wondering if that's been fully realized. It looks very open right now from the plan. I didn't see it very closely, but that was my impression.
Other committee members, have I missed anything in trying to corral a resolution here?
Hi, this is Rosa. I actually just want to make a couple of points. One is to Allison. I'm on the New York City Planning website, And it does actually list the building as a POPs on the New York City Planning website. So somebody must have done some information to be able to figure out whether or not to include it in the POPs listed. So that's one thing. Secondly, to me, I do see these as completely separate propositions. And I would say that the landscaping and the exterior work actually provides a benefit and a value to the building owner and the building users. And so it's not just giving something to the public, it actually enhances the property and provides further value to the property. So I don't think we should think of it as oh, this is just for the public realm. It's not. It's, you know, it's for the private owner. It's for the benefit of the private owner as well.
Of course.
Absolutely.
It's a great point. Yeah, I just want to point out too, I think it's interesting and curious tonight that we got one message from the Downtown Alliance, and thanks. And I see here that, you know, the lobbyist Capitolina, who, you know, worked on the Downtown Alliance's plans with Department of City Planning and closing down the Water Street Arcade. This is smacking a little bit of a little reminiscent of a desire to privatize things here in a way that's troubling. And I just want to point that out. I just found that similar, and particularly with getting rid of all those city bikes. I just hope that the creation of this new plaza isn't really about trying to remove that particular function from the site, which is very useful to the public. It feels like everything's between the bollards and the taking away of the bikes and the closing down of the public lobby. It's not feeling very public anymore.
I think between Diana and me, we've captured the things that need to go in the resolution, with conclusions being effectively, sorry to shorthand it, but a no on part B and a yes on part A. Does anybody have anything else to add before I call the question?
Patrick, yes, I'd like to respond to Alice's comment. If you listened carefully to the statement we made, we did encourage the applicant to work with the community board in resolving these issues. So I just, you know, I think her characterization's a bit off, and I just want to.
That's fair, you did, and I appreciate it. I just was curious. I'm hopeful that we really do have a real ability to engage effectively here. And thanks, Michael, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Betty, you have your hand up. Betty Kay?
Sorry, I was unmuting. I just wanted to mention one thing. I'm surprised Alice didn't already mention this, but I use this corner a lot, and it's very important to open up the space. So I'm glad to see them lifting the sidewalk to even it out, because it is a huge pinch point as I cross and walk along Murray Street. But I was wondering, with the plaza, have they considered any kind of porous materials? Because I don't want to end up with a lot of ponding, which is what happens in there anyway, especially since it's a sunken area. So just while they're doing it, are they considering these other factors? That's all, my only comment, because I love it.
Thanks, Betty.
Greg or Gloria, do you have the answer on that?
Sorry, I was muted. So we are providing porous concrete paving for this area. It's going to be plank paver, and this area will be decomposed granite that will allow more porosity to go down to the existing tree that need more water to maintain healthy.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. If we'll assume that you're in favor, unless you call out with your name and tell us that you're either voting no, recused, or abstain. Okay. With that, it sounds like it unanimously passes. Diana, do you have the count?
Yes, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in favor.
So to clarify, it's 11 in favor of a resolution effectively backing the exterior modifications. Okay, Joe, why don't you? With that, I don't think there are any more items on our agenda. So thank you everybody for your time and for hanging in there.
Wait a second.
Yes, Joe?
I didn't vote. To the best of my knowledge, I didn't vote yet.
We were not going to do a roll call. We were trying to sort of streamline things given the hour and what other committees have done, but it'll feel very much okay. So I'll take your point, Joe, just to make sure. All those in favor.
What are we voting on? Would you repeat it?
Sure. The resolution is a positive resolution with regard to Part A of the application, which is the modification of the special permit to allow for these exterior renovations to go forward.
Right.
But as to Part B, removing the designation of the public lobby, we are voting in disfavor of that.
Okay, I'm in favor.
Okay. So again, is anybody not in favor of that resolution or recused or abstain? All right, the opinion of the chair, it passes unanimously. That's the last item of our agenda. So we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you all next week.
And thanks, Patrick. Thanks.
Thank